Hey, productivity pals, are you wondering how to plan your day, how to choose what to do? Well, there is a task planning method, apparently worth $500,000, that I'm going to try out, and I thought I'd take you along for the ride. A few weeks ago, I started experimenting with the Ivy Lee method, the subject of innumerable blog articles touting its simplicity and effectiveness. Does it work? Should you give it a try? I've recorded myself at the start of this experiment. Let's check it out. Hey YouTube, it is experiment time here again at You. We are diving into the Ivy Lee productivity method, a method that made Bethlehem Steel owner Charles M. Schwab, no relation to investment giant Charles S. Schwab, an even wealthier baron than he already was. Ivy Lee is actually known as the father of modern public relations, and the interwebs tell me that, he was a PR man for the Rockefeller family, the American Red Cross, Princeton, and A.G. Farben, which was a German chemical company, which brought him under suspicion as a Nazi sympathizer. But for today, we care about what he brought to Bethlehem Steel. So back in World War I, he gave Charles M. Schwab's executive team a technique for managing their tasks that some folks still use today. Ivy Lee gave the advice on spec. He only asked for payment if it worked. Well, it worked so well that Schwab gave Lee $25,000, which is worth about $500,000 today. So what is in this $500,000 method? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward, and I'm gonna give it to you for free. So here are the steps. First, the day before, choose 6 of the most important things you need to do. Next, sort that list from most important to least. Then, on the day of, start doing the first thing on your list, and don't go to the next thing until you are done with the first. Then work your way down the list. At the end of the day, make tomorrow's list, rolling forward anything that didn't get done today onto the top of tomorrow's list. That's it. So I'm going to do this Ivy Lee method experiment for at least a week, maybe 2, and I'll report back. And just for fun, I'm recording my predictions now of how the experiment is going to go, and then we'll see how many were right. First off, I have some positive predictions. Hey, let me pop in here and just fast forward. You don't need to hear the list of my predictions when I'm going to say them again when I give you my results, so let's just zip to the end. Okay, so there are my predictions and my questions about the method. I'll see you here back in a couple of weeks. Well, for me, a couple of seconds for you with my results and takeaways. And meanwhile, if you're interested in more productivity content like this one, more experiments, you can hit that subscribe button and then hit that bell icon for notifications. And while you're down there, you can give this video a like to help out the channel. Okay, see you soon. Okay, welcome back to today. Before we dive into my results, let me share that in the intervening weeks, I tried to find an original source for the story behind the Ivy Lee method, and I could not. I Googled a lot. I read a history of the PR industry in which Ivy Lee was the central character. I read Ivy Lee's biography by Ray Eldon Hibert. I even asked my librarian. I can't find an original source citation. So yeah, I suspect that the Ivy Lee method origin story is somewhat apocryphal. It is even referred to as a story in the biography with no footnote. My guess is that Ivy Lee did share some prioritizing tips that Schwab paid for, but the exact details are lost to time. Nevertheless, the source is, I don't think, actually that important. The question is, does the method work? Well, let's see. First off, I have some positive predictions. I predict I will enjoy having the focusing tool, potentially reducing distracting thoughts and input. Yes, this Ivy Lee method definitely acted as a focusing tool. When I was feeling scattered, I could just tell myself, hey, I'm doing the next thing on the list, and that's all I'm doing, and that's that. I can't say it helped with motivation, which is related to, but not the same thing as focus. I did have to use the timer trick a couple times to get myself going. I'll put a link to my timer video in the description box below. But for focusing, I will say yes, when I had a lot of input coming at me, it helped me to stay on track. Second, I'm going to predict I'll enjoy the permissions to set things aside, perhaps maybe reducing overwhelm. Mostly, yes. I decided what was important and the rest could wait. It did help me keep the voice that tries to tell me I should be doing 5 things at once at bay. And a third positive prediction, I predict that I'm gonna enjoy having decisions made ahead of time, minimizing in-the-moment decision fatigue. Definitely yes. Because I had already decided what I was going to do, I didn't have to think about it much. Did I change my mind or lose commitment? Well, only on the days when I really hadn't taken the time to properly make the list. When I gave the list some good attention, I had no reason to deviate. And I have a couple of negative predictions. I predict that writing the list at night might be hard for me. I might forget to do it because I'm somebody who doesn't really have a shutdown routine yet. I don't really have a specific way that I end my workday. I'm working on that, but that's another video. Nope, I actually didn't forget. Some days I would do it the day of instead of the night before, but I actually never forgot that I was using the method. I adapted to it immediately because I really liked the momentum it was giving me. And second, I predict keeping yesterday's order of any rolled forward items may not take into account the sort of internal energy of the day or external shifting priorities. If I have to roll forward just what didn't get done into the top of the next day, you know, we'll see if that works. Yes, indeed. I broke the rule of insisting that the incomplete bottom of yesterday's list becomes the top of today's list. I just couldn't work that way. Deadlines got closer, so non-urgent stuff became urgent, and new things materialized and needed some attention, and my enthusiasm for one thing or another shifted. Plus, given the modern lifestyle of so many of us who work from home these days, work and life kind of overlap a lot. I personally mix it up with some personal time during the work week and some work time during the weekends. So I made an Ivy League list actually every day, not just during the work week. And I thought about it. If I took Friday's list into Saturday, it is a weekend day, so it just wouldn't make sense. So I would never do the Ivy League method if I couldn't reconsider the list every day. Next, I came up with some questions. I'll be investigating these as I do the experiment. First off, I'm wondering, will I fuss about what to choose about what goes on the list and the order of that list? Are my gut feelings going to be good enough, or do I need a tool to help me what goes on the list and how to prioritize within that list? Turns out gut feelings are good enough, or at least for me anyway. David Allen of Getting Things Done fame talks about this. I think I heard him on a podcast or an interview. I don't have a specific citation, sorry. But he said that once you have in front of you an inventory of everything you have to do, once your possibilities are kind of brought forth, then what you do is just something you know. Your gut can guide you. And speaking of having it all in front of you, I'll put a link to my Art of the Capture video in the description box below so you can get some tips on how to get it all down and get it all in front of you. Second, I'm wondering how I will define what kind of thing goes on the list versus what things I can assume I will automatically do. What is routine that will just kick in, and what do I need to be considering list worthy? This was a point of contention for me. I chose to experiment and see if I should put house cleaning on the Ivy League list rather than letting routine take care of it. Mixed results. On the one hand, I didn't have trouble motivating myself to do those house cleaning chores like I sometimes do, because it was like, hey, it's just the next thing on the list. Just go do it. But it did mean that the house kind of got maybe a little bit cluttered and a little bit gross because my gut wasn't always telling me to put it in the top 6. I still don't quite know how to handle this balance between reliable routines that wouldn't go on the list and specific projects that should definitely go on the list. I mean, there are even some really busy days when I have to put take a shower, which you would think is pretty routine, on the list just to make sure it happens because it's not gonna happen otherwise. So, you know, maybe some more experimenting is needed. Third, I wonder how important it will be to have a complete inventory of tasks to choose from. Do I need to maintain my bigger to-do list really well? Or can I trust that these top 6 things will move everything forward enough that having a spiffy backlog list just, maybe isn't super important? In other words, I'm wondering, does this Ivy League method take care of managing my to-do list for me? Or is it really just a motivation and focusing tool? Yeah, the Ivy League method is definitely not going to manage your master to-do list for you. Or at least it didn't for me, because I always have way more than 6 things going at once. Last check, my list had about 200 items on it. I certainly couldn't, nor would never want to keep that all in my head until it was time to plunk down the 6 for the day. For the first week of the experiment, I tried not keeping my master list up, but that things started to get really shabby, and I didn't like that my tasks and projects were feeling scattered and kind of cluttered. So mid-experiment, I had to put on the Ivy Lee list a task to update my master to-do list. Fourth question I have, will I struggle with tasks that can't be done in a single day? Like, I can't write a novel on the list, right? Because that certainly takes more than one day. So what's the best way to break it down? Do I make subtasks of a larger project, or do I just put time limits on things to kind of define a item on the list? I did actually get a chance to test this one out. I had a pretty long client project. In total, it took me about a little over 12 hours, and I spread it out over several days. And I did worry about doing it to the exclusion of other stuff, but also it was actually kind of luxurious. It was nice to just indulge and work on this one thing. Very satisfying to see it all the way through until it was done with full permission. Now, of course, I couldn't possibly let it be the only thing I did. I did my routine stuff like replying to emails and such. And here's the thing, because I broke the rule that incomplete items at the bottom of today's list had to move to the top of tomorrow's list, each day I did put this larger project on the list, but I didn't always put it at the top. So I did get to it, but it wasn't the first thing every day. And that was my sneaky way of not spending all day on it. Because it was sometimes the third or fourth thing down the list, I would first do other stuff and then spend the rest of the day working on this bigger project. It's actually kind of cool. I never would have thought of that solution, just thinking about it. This is, I guess, the power of experimentation. Question number 5, I wonder, will there come up a time when I'm really itching to move on to the next item on the list, even if I don't finish the last one? And if so, why will I have that itch? And if so, is it okay to move on, or is that a defeat? Okay, yes, there were definitely some instances where I was like, I'm tired and done with this thing, but it still isn't done. And a couple times I tried pushing forward, but then, I just stopped and moved on to the next item. And I had no sense of defeat. After years of not taking breaks when my body asked for them and seeing the awful results, I just refused to do that to myself anymore. So I just put those unfinished things back on the list for the next day, or you know what, even in one case, I put it on pause and let it percolate up a couple days later. But I think this sort of thing needs to maybe be the exception rather than the rule for the method to work its magic, because part of the magic is in seeing this, each of the items all the way through so that you're really committed to what you're doing. And here's another question I forgot to ask at the beginning. Does the Ivy Lee method take away the need for time blocking? Nah, not exactly. I still needed to block out exercise and other breaks to make them happen, to make sure I was really committed, because otherwise I was just going to push on through. And it doesn't say set your ideal work hours, for example, or the rhythm of your week. But all of the benefits of time blocking, linked to my time blocking video in the description box below, I didn't miss the time pressure of a time block. As I said before, it was kind of luxurious to keep working on something until it was done, and I enjoyed the ease of what that brought to my day. In the end, I enjoyed the Ivy Lee method way more than I thought I would. I kind of thought something so simple wasn't even really a thing, but it turns out it was very focusing and helped with the decision fatigue and a bit of overwhelm. I had no trouble remembering to make the list, and actually I found I really enjoyed the luxury of seeing something through to the end and not having to shift gears so much. And on those couple of times when I ran out of steam on something and had to set it aside, it was no problem. I just let it float back to the list when the energy for that item returned. So, would I recommend this $500,000 productivity method? Yeah, I would. Maybe a bit surprising given this method is 100 years old, but I guess the need for focus and prioritizing is timeless. Who really knows what prompted Ivy Lee to share this tool with Schwab and why? We only know that it apparently led to an increase in productivity at Bethlehem Steel that Charles M. Schwab was willing to pay dearly for. So there you have it. Another You to Do You experiment on the books. I love experimenting like this, and I hope you'll give it a try. You never know what you might discover, what you might learn about how you tick and what works for you. Let us know in the comments below if you'll be giving this one a try. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.